Hi, everyone. We're glad to have you with us today. I'll give everyone just a quick moment to join and get out of the waiting room and onto the webinar. As you are joining, what we would love to have you do is just take a moment and tell us where you're from and what organization you're with in the chat. And we'll just give people a chance to join live and get started here in just a moment. So we're looking forward to welcoming you. All right. I think people are still trickling in, but we will go ahead and get started. So welcome to today's Q&A with Veritus Group. I'm Rebecca Huron, the Director of Content Marketing and Learning here, and I'll be working behind the scenes just to help our presenters today and make sure that you all are having a good experience. If you have joined just in the last couple of moments, please make sure to do an introduction in the chat so that we can know where you're from and say hello. I also want to go through just a few housekeeping things before I hand this over to our presenters today to make sure that you understand how to use our webinar system. So what we would like to have you do is put your questions in the Q&A box. Unfortunately, we're not able to take them out loud today, but your questions are really important to us. That's the whole point for today. So we want to get as many of your questions as possible. And so if you're not seeing a Q&A box option, it might be under the More section in your toolbar of your Zoom. So just click on those three dots and it'll probably pop up there. It might also be an option just in the toolbar itself. So grab that and put your questions in there. Hopefully you came with a lot and are ready to share those with us. If you haven't found the chat yet, that is probably also a box in your toolbar. You are welcome to use the chat as we're going through the Q&A today and sharing thoughts and ideas or anything that maybe has been helpful to you. But if you have a question that you want us to answer, please do put that in the Q&A box. That will make it as easy as possible for us to keep track of that. And I just also wanted to remind everybody that we will send a link out to a recording of this Q&A so that you can listen back to it and share it with team members. That will come out via email tomorrow. So just be on the lookout for that. And I think that is all I need to cover. And I'm going to hand it over to Kendra for introductions and to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm Kendra Loper. I am the Client Services Director here at Veritus Group. I'm located in Oklahoma City, and so enjoying some great weather. I hope you are wherever you are today. We are so excited to be with you, and I know you have a lot of burning questions. We hope we can answer for you and provide some insight. And I just want to say thank you for joining us at such a busy time of the year for fundraisers. I know you're in your crunch time. This is the Super Bowl time for fundraisers. So thanks for taking time to join us today. Diana, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks. I hail from the Philadelphia area, so go Eagles. Good season for us so far, emphasis, because it's fallen apart so many times. I was a frontline fundraiser like you all for 32 years, including being a major gift officer and managing major gifts and setting up a mid-level program. And I've been on the Veritus team 11 years and worked with, hundreds of gift officers one-on-one in coaching and in every industry I think that we have. Matt, on to you.
All right, thanks, Diana. Yeah, my name is Matt Korn. I've been with Veritus now for about a year and a half, but have been in fundraising in some form, major gifts, mid-level, stewardship for 20 plus years with large and small and domestic and international based organizations. I am Atlanta based, originally an Ohioan, and yeah, good to see so many of you from around the country. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Diana and Matt. I know we are in for some great insights from both of you today. We're fortunate to have you on the call. So let's get started with some questions. That's our whole focus today is your questions, hoping to get as many answers to you as we can. I am going to serve as facilitator. I might jump in here or there to answer a question, but for the most part, I'm going to be pitching to Diana and Matt. And so Diana and Matt, feel free to jump in at any point if you have extra insight to add. But Diana, let's start with you. So this is our first question. Says, I'm newer to my organization, which is quite small, with one half-time development position, but I would like to emphasize growing a larger recurring donor base. What's the best way to go about this?
That's a great question. And it really is true that the sustainers or recurring donors can often be the backbone of support of an organization, particularly when you're small. Now at Veritus, we focus on relationship management fundraising, so we're not the experts in this kind of work. But as you heard from our intro, we've all been involved in fundraising for many, many years. So there are some simple things you can do to grow that group. One is always include that option on any of your direct response, the reply form that comes back. You can add it in your receipt process. You can have something there where they can add it on. You can certainly think about mini social media campaigns, which are relatively inexpensive to pull off, where you're talking about monthly support. But what I would say is critical, and this applies for mid-level and major gift. You'll hear us say this a million times. Focus on impact. That is the number one way you want to inspire a donor to consider partnering with you on a monthly basis. So if you say you're animal rescue, and you have a place where they physically come to maybe to adopt an animal, maybe you have an inspiring message about that impact that they can make with a $50 a month gift. Right there in the adoption papers that you have. Maybe there's a big sign that when you walk in, there's a story of a donor who's become a monthly supporter in what they're doing. Look for all those little ways. It's pretty incremental, but if you're a small shop and you don't have a lot of money, those are ways that you can begin building that.
Great advice, Diana. Matt, next question is for you. Should a mid-tier and major donor campaign run with different messaging when introducing a new 5-year program and platform funding model worth $1 million? Now, the context that this person added was only 2 of those programs will be funded for $2 million over 5 years, so about $200K annually. And then the foundation invests $6 million in research for about 60 scientists every year.
Great. Yeah, it's always nice to have those specific projects and programs to put in front of donors. A couple of ways to approach this question. One being really being able to take a close look at your ability to manage your portfolio respectively. So when we look at, from a Veritus approach, when we look at a mid-level portfolio, we do recommend a caseload of 600 donors. And for a major gift portfolio, we recommend 150 qualified donors. Now, both of these numbers are based on if you have full-time fundraisers, mid-level officers, and major gift officers. And when we talk about 150 qualified donors for a major gift portfolio, we're talking about donors who are not only current in their giving, but are also demonstrating that they want an active relationship with you as a fundraiser and with your organization. So again, getting back to the size of portfolio, 600 for mid-level and 150 qualified donors for major gifts, the messaging can be the same as far as what you're putting in front of a donor, but you're going to think about it differently in terms of just your ability to manage either 600 donors or 150 donors. If you are a mid-level officer, what you may be looking at is tiering your donors. So you have different tiers, tier A, B, and C donors. The tier A's being those that you can have a focus on having a deeper relationship with, and where you might, as you're sending touch points about these programs, you may be adding handwritten notes, you may be handwriting envelopes, and again, just being a bit more personalized with those higher tier mid-level donors. As we think about connecting with the major gift donors, that's where you really want to spend some time building the relationship. It is a patient process. You don't need to feel, we don't want you to feel rushed in terms of trying to get to that gift, but rather spending some time to really understand what inspires the donor. Even looking at this example, 2 different programs, which of those 2 programs might really excite the donor, and then developing a touch point plan from there that's really going to inspire their giving, and you can base your solicitations around what you have learned as you've built that relationship with a donor.
Yeah, it's really the same thing we said about recurring. What's the impact? So what's the potential impact of a mid-level gift or a major gift with those programs? So the message about the program is the same, but maybe you contextualize the impact they can have.
Good. Thank you for that. And Matt, a quick question, a follow-up for you. And when you're talking about those 600 donors and a mid-level caseload, how many should be in tiers A, B, or C?
Right. So for tier A, it's about 10% of your portfolio. Then for tier B, roughly 25%, and then that remaining 65% or so would be tier C. And again, you're going to for those tier A's, you're going to do more of your personalization, and then as you move down through tier B and tier C, it'll be less personalization.
Good. Thank you, Matt. Okay, so this next question, and just a reminder, as questions come up for you, if you came with some questions you wanted to have answered today, don't forget to put those in that Q&A box so we can take a look at those when we get to that point. We've got a few prepared questions that you submitted ahead of time, and then we hope to take some live today. So this next question is really about working with leadership in your own organization. So this question says, how would you suggest soliciting staff leadership for gifts? Who should solicit them? Every other organization where I've worked, the director of development and top leaders made gifts at least to the mid-level giving society level. In my current organization, leadership members talk about creating a culture of philanthropy, but are not giving. So should I solicit them? Should I ask a board member to, or do you have other ideas? So I think it's great that you had an organization where your leadership previously was giving really generously. I think there's so many nuances to this conversation around why someone gives, what is important to them, and how you navigate that within your own organization. Of course, you hope that you can talk about, it's a good sign that they're already talking about a culture of philanthropy and what that means in your organization. I think about your leadership just like you would the donors in your caseload. Have you gotten to know them? Have you talked to them about what's important to them? Have you provided them with information that you're sharing with your donors and what your donors are saying about, what they're hearing about the work of your organization? Sometimes we think about leadership differently because, they're insiders. They should know this information. They're getting it firsthand. They're hearing it in meetings and certainly know the program updates. But I think we do still have to think about those leadership donors as donors. What do we know about them? What parts of our work are most important to them and are really what I say, turn their heart light on when they think about how they want to give. And there's so many reasons why people give or don't give. I think it's so nuanced. There are some things that you can do right from the get-go, talking to your HR department about including that conversation in onboarding, providing a way for employees, whether they're leaders or at any level in the organization, if they want to give on a regular basis, if there's payroll deduction, those kind of things. But that kind of conversation can happen as a part of onboarding. But I think if they're not giving yet, give them an opportunity, right? Get to know them, lean in a bit, be curious about what's important to them and why they may be supporting. For board members, it's a little different, I think, in terms of an organization. It really depends on what your requirements are for donors or for board members and how they enter the organization. Some boards are required to give at certain levels. If yours isn't, that could be something that you're looking at. But in terms of who should solicit those leaders, I think having that conversation within your development team with your supervisor and having that start from the top should be part of the conversation as well. Okay, this next question, let's go to Diana for this one. So this question says, I'm working on building a major gifts pipeline for our organization. The majority of the major gifts have come through events and are from donors that have a personal connection to a board member, not necessarily the mission. How can I reconnect and build relationships with lapsed major donors who aren't really connected to the organization?
That really is a great question, and it is a perennial problem. I mean, I'm a board member of a small nonprofit, and one of my roles is to bring people and introduce them to the mission and help, some of them give because of me. Some of them latch onto the mission and continue giving. So what do you do is the big question. I think you start with the board member that invited the person, and you ask that board member to engage with you. I have a couple of examples, both fairly recently. One, I went out and actually did some board training with an organization. And what we had worked through was the board member who identified a donor that they brought in, or even this time a prospective donor. The board member wrote the email to ask the donor or prospective donor to engage with, in this case, the executive director, did that introduction. In this case, the executive director picked up from there and went forward. Truth be told, it has not yielded much. It was a lot of work, but it did not yield much because it was pretty low level on the board members' part to engage. Another organization I work with, it was approached differently, and it was an advisory board council member actually who had the connection to a donor. This board member approached it differently. This board member drove things by engaging with the prospective donor, getting the luncheon set, did all the legwork, the back and forth. And you, as a gift officer, you know how long it takes to get a meeting, right? Or a lunch or anything. Was present at the meeting. And as a result of that meeting with the gift officer, the potential donor, and the board member, it really was a great conversation. The prospective donor said, yes, I am interested. From that point forward, the gift officer took over the relationship, reporting back to the board member to keep them in the loop what was going on. And over a period of 3 years, the initial gift was, I want to say somewhere around the, I kid you not, in the realm of like $750,000, did that again, and then made a $10 million commitment. So it does work, but look at what the board member did. If your board is not willing to do that, I'm sorry to say there's not much more you can do. But that said, when you get these people, create a plan for how you're going to do it, follow your plan, and then bless and release if they don't want to continue on.
That's good advice. I think those board members are so critical, especially when a donor comes in through a relationship for a board member. So engaging those board members is so critical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Diana, back to you on this one. We are working to build a mid-level program and have a few questions. First, should sustainers be included? Second, many of our direct response givers have high net wealth capacities but aren't giving at a major gift level. Should they be included in mid-level to try to upgrade their giving? And then the last question is, we're trying to figure out the right number of donors for a caseload. Right now we have 750 in our mid-level range. How many team members do I need to manage this group of donors?
Okay, so let me unpack it a bit, and let me start with it depends. Great, frustrating answer. It depends. So on sustainers, yes, you can bring them into a mid-level program, but there are a few things to think about. In your mid-level in your sustainer program, is there a really strong, robust communication plan already in place? If there is, and you want to bring them to mid-level, maybe you make them a tier D. Matt referenced the ABC tiers, but maybe you put them in a tier D and they get a quarterly touch from you because they are getting strong communication. And then you want to build into that 4 touches, if you're doing it, a meaningful time to ask the donor to consider an increased gift based on impact, right? So yes, sustainers can be in there. Pay attention to it. If they're not responding relationally, you can remove them. If they are responding relationally, keep them in, but not as much outreach because of the other things they might get. Now, high net worth, this kind of gets my blood boiling, sorry to say, but yes, when you get those wealth capacities, I just want to stress that is one leg of the stool. It is a helpful piece of information, but it can be drastically misguiding as well. So I've worked with a few organizations that have used net worth to pull people onto a caseload. Sometimes it went right on as if they were qualified, and sometimes they put them through a qualification process. What I would say to you, if you want to do this, is test it. Maybe take 50 donors, keep it small and measurable, run those donors through your intro process, interest years if it's mid-level, or your qualification process if it's major gift. Pay attention. If they do relationally qualify, even though they're high capacity but low giving, you can keep them on the caseload and keep a few steps that you're going to continue to work through. But again, create a plan, execute the plan, and then release them if it's a no-go. That said, every organization I've worked with who's done this, it ended up not really getting very much in results. The juice was not worth the squeeze, if you use that kind of expression. So test it so that you can honestly work it out, but pay attention to your results and then act accordingly. And then the last is the caseload size. Again, it depends. 750 is really the maximum that we ever recommend. Matt mentioned the 600, which is our norm. But you can do 750 if you have really good tools. And what do I mean by that? Can you call right out of the database? Can you email? Not that's wrong symbol. Email right out of the database. And when you email, do you have that process? It's often through a BCC, a blind carbon copy. And we say CC, we don't have carbon copy of anything anymore, but that brings it right back into the CRM. Those little things make it possible for you to handle more donors. And another is if you have a good tool, if you're using email, particularly your tier C donors, if you can mail merge your emails and then send them out with some caveats. One, be very clear how big your groups can be, because you do not want to set up a spam alert and then get blocked from AOL or Gmail or anyone. It's really important that you pay attention to your IT protocols. And two, we are not talking about a mail merge program like Market Cloud, but there's nothing wrong with Market Cloud, but it's got to be an email from you, right? It's got to look like all your other emails. If it looks different, then it just doesn't have the same effect. So those are things you can do. And then also, if you have big caseloads, make sure your CRM dashboard is supporting you with some good tools to keep on top of things. I've seen a number of things developed most recently in Salesforce, but I've seen it in Razor's Edge and Roy as well. Creating a simple donut kind of tool where maybe it's based on the last contact date. So you have a donut and it tells you donors with contact from you, not any contact, relationship contact, 1 to 30 days, 31 to 90 days, 91 to 120 days, and 121 plus. So you can pay attention and it helps you not have someone fall through the cracks. So if you see people in the 121, you click through the donut, you find those 12 people and you make a plan. So that's a fantastic tool. You can also have a donut tool with your tier, your A, B, C, and maybe D. Well, there'd be a slice that there's no tier. You can click through and make sure that, because people get assigned to you that you don't know about, that helps you do it. And then you also can have a tool with a last gift date. If you have renewals and that sort of thing, I'm not talking about renewal dates. I'm talking about the last time they gave, because that's actually more important from a management. And you can easily see who is lapsing, about to lapse, or who is lapsed. Again, click through. So if you have a big portfolio, these tools help you manage. If you have none of these tools, I recommend dial back how many, because going back to what we said earlier, better to have fewer donors you're managing well than a lot of donors you fail at miserably.
You bet. And someone's asking, are you saying donut tool? And what do you mean by that?
Donut, like a donut. It looks like a donut and it has well, maybe it's more like it has slices. And so you have this round widget, if you will, and it has little slices with the count for each of your groups. And if it's built right, you click on the wedge with the 91 to 128, and that brings you right to the donors with 91. Your IT people will understand this.
Kind of like a pie chart, I think, right? Yeah. Like a pie chart. And some CRMs kind of have that.
It's a pie chart. Sometimes it's a donut. It's a circle. Anyway.
Yeah, perfect.
IT people know what you mean. That's the stuff they can talk about till the cows come home.
That's right. Okay, let's jump over to some of our questions that are coming in through the Q&A box. Matt, how about you take this one? Is a call or email better to ask a donor if they want to be part of your major gift program?
Call or an email? So is there any more context around this question, Kendra, as far as where I would start is really depending on the relationship with the donor. So if this is a donor that and we're talking about the major gift level, this is a donor that hopefully through the relationship development process with the donor, you've already established communication preferences. Now, from that, you can start to determine what's going to make the most sense for engagement of a donor when it comes to a solicitation. Where it's a little bit tricky to answer the question is because the way we at Veritus approach our work with major gift donors is that by the time you're arriving at the solicitation process, it's more than likely that you've already established a close enough relationship with a major gift donor that you know how to handle the solicitation process. The donor has been a part of this process along the way. You've provided impact reports. You've provided other touch points to keep the donor updated. You've determined communication preferences. And so that question really gets answered along the way as you develop that relationship. Now, if this is a new donor, again, we really encourage you to keep in mind that this is a patient process. When it comes to major gifts, this is a long game. It can really take um, 12, 18, maybe even 24 months in some cases before you're really getting to the point where we're encouraging you to really focus on the solicitation. Up until that point, uh, you'd ideally be working with a donor on a qualification process, meaning there are structured steps that you would be taking to find out some of this information about a donor and to strengthen that relationship with them so that when they become qualified, again, using that qualified language, they're current givers and they want that two-way communication. They want that involvement with the organization. Again, you know how to approach the solicitation.
You bet. That's a great answer. Thank you, Matt. Okay, Diana, this one's for you. We have a new building that the NPO has recently acquired. It needs to be extensively remodeled to meet the program needs. We don't have time to do a 3 to 5 year campaign. Thoughts on tactics of attracting major donors and building relationship with new donors using this project as a starting place?
So say that again, it's a new building?
They've acquired a new building. It needs to be renovated. They don't have time for a 3 to 5 year campaign, but what are some thoughts on how we might attract major donors and new donors using this particular project as a starting place?
Depending on what the place looks like and what it's being used for, get them in to see it. And you have to be able to connect the impact, like what this physical space, how that relates to your impact and whatever it is that you do. So if your building is a classroom or school building, that's easy. Come in, see the classroom, see what happens actually in the building. If it's your offices that facilitate you doing something else, so you're an advocacy group for world hunger and coming to the building, not so exciting, but you might still be able to have them come in and envision what can happen as a result of being able to work here. So maybe you create a visual tour of the place while you're still building it out. They can walk from room to room, and actually what they see on the wall is a picture and explanation of some aspect of your work, and you talk about that. You can have program people spaced out. That might help them get excited, but you got to connect. It's not easy to connect physical space to mission or impact, but that's what you got to work at. I do have somebody right now it's a building project. It's actually pretty far along. It's a $30 million project and they're in the final 3 million. It won't be open until 2026. So closing that final 3 million, similar kind of situation. What he is doing, because they can't bring people there because it's still a hard hat situation, he will have a small group with the hard hats and do a virtual tour live streamed so people can do that and then get a sense of how the space is used. And then when I was at a university situation setting and we built what we called our university commons student space, we did get special clearance to have people come in for a hard hat party. And we did the same thing. We had posters everywhere of what every space would be used for. And we were tying it to historically like in our case below, they had a coffee shop that was called The Chat, and it was been called The Chat for 80 years. Everyone knows what The Chat means. So they rebuilt a chat space in the new facility, and that for the grads from 1960 back was gold, because they could come in and they could remember and they could understand why this place means something to students. So, everything you're going to hear from us a lot. What's the impact of what this is? And tie that to asking them to engage, to come to or to engage, to support. That's really it. You need to know what the impact of that place will be.
Oh, that's such good advice. I love the live streaming idea, and particularly thinking about how, this space will be used when it's renovated and what would be missed in our organization through the impact if we're not able to renovate this space. So great advice. Okay, Matt.
And actually, Kendra, if I could jump in for a second, just to compliment what Diana was sharing. Pre-COVID, I actually ran a major gift international donor travel program and had a lot of success with it. And we see time and time again, whether it's international trips or a tour through a food bank, the more you can bring the donor to the program, the more you can make it tangible and real for them. Oftentimes you'll see a lot of success from that. And I can even think of obviously, when COVID hit, the program I was managing at this international NGO, the travel part came to a stop, and so we had to get creative and ended up running some virtual tours with our host country staff. And even from those virtual tours, we saw five-figure gifts come in as a result. So again, the more tangible you can make that work, the greater the results in many cases.
Yeah, such good advice. Okay, Matt, I'm going to come back to you with this question. I'm struggling to figure out how and when to move a donor from mid-level to major gifts. What metrics do you use, and how do you determine the donor is ready to move? And then what are the benefits of handing the donor off if the mid-level officer has built a really strong relationship with that donor?
Great question. So there's a when, there's a how, and there's a benefits to this. So for moving a mid-level donor to major gifts, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your team is very clear on your threshold for major gifts and mid-level. You don't want that to be a constantly moving line. There are always going to be unique circumstances, which we certainly encourage review of those on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, establish your threshold on what makes a major gift donor and stick with that. As far as the metrics go, the second piece of that, it gets back to that qualification, right? So you want to look at donors who are current in their giving, are giving year over year, and who are also showing that they want to be an active part of your organization. And this can mean a lot of different things in terms of they can be responding to your engagement positively. They answer your phone calls. They respond to your emails. It can be experienced through an increase in their giving year over year. So you're seeing them engage more and more through their gifts. It could be volunteering. So a number of ways that they are showing that they want to be involved with the organization. As far as the how, when you're making a transition for a donor going from mid-level to major gifts, is make sure that the mid-level officer and the major gift officer are a part of that transition. The mid-level officer can make that handoff, can make that introduction to the major gift officer. Again, lots of thanks for the support. Help the donor understand, and this is where we get into the benefits part of why it really is the donor is seen as such an important partner to the organization by going into a or a major gift portfolio. When they're in that portfolio, they should be receiving much more personalized attention, probably different opportunities to connect with staff leadership, and maybe even some of those other unique opportunities where if there are chances for travel for different tours, they'll have those as well that are often reserved for higher level donors. So again, make sure you're very clear on what your thresholds are. Make sure that these are qualified donors. Make sure that the appropriate staff are involved in that transition, and then let the donor know why it really is a privilege to be in that major gift portfolio.
Let me just jump in. I just had this happen this week. A mid-level officer had been working with the donor for several years. Through conversation, the donor upgraded, I think it was to 25,000. Over time, they had talked about getting engaged locally, but it never really happened. So with this $25,000 threshold, it became a more natural opportunity to move to major gift. So now he has introduced this donor to the major gift officer in the region and positioned it with, and you've said you want to get engaged locally. My colleague, I'll say Susie, can really help make that happen. I want to connect you to, and you can always reach back out to me, but she is going to be able to help you do what you really want to do. Perfect.
Love it.
Yeah, thanks, Diana, and that's also to complement that as well. That's a great point too. In fact, I'm working with an organization right now who they just finished up their fiscal year. They finished 38% year over year, and right now we are in the process of moving their major gift threshold up because they had such a strong performance from their mid-level. What I want to be careful in sharing that information about thinking about your threshold is, for example, let's say that you're looking at your threshold and you may want to have a $5,000 threshold for your major gifts. Well, if you look at your data and you see that you have 300 donors who are $5,000 plus givers, but you only have one major gift officer, you're going to need to reevaluate that because you can't put 300 major gift level donors in a major gift portfolio and expect that they will get the kind of personalized attention that they need. So you might need to look at raising your major gift threshold to 7,500 plus, and perhaps your mid-level threshold. It's the same concept for your mid-level portfolio as well. Perhaps your mid-level threshold was at $1,000. Again, you only have one mid-level officer, but you need to raise it to $2,500. So that's something to think about as well as you think about the thresholds.
Great advice. Okay, Diana, I'm going to pitch this one over to you, but Matt, feel free to jump in as well. We are just starting the major donor work with the help of Veritus, but I have a general question about fundraising at this time of year. We have sent appeals, different styles, and are just not getting a significant response. We are at year end with a significant revenue deficit. Are we alone in seeing this? Is it election related? What could we be doing differently to reach out to our donors? And by the way, we're launching today a massive personal outreach call campaign through the end of the year.
Yeah, it's too early to say what the election impact is. I think in our gut, we kind of all feel that way, but we don't really know. For whatever reason, and some of it's the market. Were they waiting on how the market is doing? The market's been fabulous. Was it going to go even further, with a capital gains consideration? Yes, I'm seeing this somewhat with the clients I have, but more personally with a small organization I'm on the board with, we felt this severely. We're a very small organization, and when 3 or 4 major donors don't give, it's a huge problem. What we did was, as board members, because there was a very small staff, we took it upon ourselves to contact each about 5 people who typically give in December and ask them to consider giving their gift earlier. And we tied it to impact over what raising $100,000 now would mean by the end of December in terms of the number of people we serve, families that we help in legal crisis. So tying, again, you're going to hear this from us again and again, tying it to impact, explaining the urgency in terms of these are people that we might not be able to help. And it's legitimately true. That jump-started it. And we have closed that $100,000 gap already. And we're confident moving forward because unfortunately we're drilling into our reserves, which that's what they're there for, but you don't want to go all the way down to the bottom. That's not what they're there for. So if you're launching this very personal phone follow-up, so it's phone and email combination is the other thing I would say. And, there's a great way to approach this is to craft an email that explains the situation, not in depth, but say, Matt, this is, thank you so much for your generosity over the last 5 years. It's been an unusual fall for us, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this to your attention since you have invested so much in change through our organization. Keep that. They're not giving to your organization. They're giving to make change some way, somehow. Always have that part of the sentence. Are you open to a conversation about what your philanthropy might look like this year? I would love to give you a call later this week. Please let me know if that works. Or you can conversely just say, I'll give you a call later this week, and hopefully I can drill down and answer questions you have. Presumptive language. I will answer questions you have. Assume they have questions. If you write presumptively, the donor will think, oh yeah, what are my questions? As opposed to, I don't have any questions. And you use that tag team. I've seen organizations successfully say they had 100 people to work through. You had 100 people, and you can reasonably only call 25 a week. Monday, 25 emails. Tuesday through Friday, 25 follow-up calls. Next Monday, 25 emails. Tuesday, and keep doing that. And you'll be able to work it through. That does a few things for you too. It makes it something you can accomplish. And you're no longer thinking I have to make 100 phone calls. You're thinking 25 people I'm going to reach out to this week in 5 business days. That's not so bad. So create traps and ways that you can move through this because there is an emotional component to what you're doing. And then just start to execute and just keep working your plan. At this time of year, if you create the plan, work it.
Great advice. I love that presumptive language in particular. That's so important as we're communicating with donors, right? So great insight. Okay.
And I do like that. Oh, I'm sorry, Kendra.
No, go ahead.
I do like that idea too of what's that, and I talk a lot about this with the fundraisers that I coach. It's that justification for that increase ask, right? Finding that that stat that says we have in 2024 we've served 10,000 more people than we did in 2023. Can you help us meet that need? And so finding the justification in there. The other item when it comes to stats like that I would also encourage is look for stats that are digestible for a donor. And what I mean by that is again getting back to that idea of it being tangible. You know, we can look at a large organization and say, oh, they reached 3 million people this year. Well, we all know that's a lot of people. But when you say something like 1 in 4 of our neighbors is dealing with food insecurity. Well, you can take your kids, you can take your dog for a walk around the neighborhood and look at, and every 4 houses you pass, one of them, a family is dealing with food insecurity. So you can also think about the kind of stats that you're putting in front of donors, again, that can resonate much more than some big number.
Yeah.
You bet. You bet. Okay, so this is for both of you, and you've touched on it a little bit in some of your previous answers, but do you have any unique donor touch points you could share? I try to stay in touch with my donors once a month, but sometimes I just feel like I need something new in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, sometimes it's just paying attention to what's fun. I get New York Times feed, and there was a really cool piece about San Francisco and doing what would you do if you had 36 hours in San Francisco? Really cool piece of information. So I sent it out to my gift officers who are in the Bay Area and said, hey, this could be a fun touch to your donors. Say, you know, I know we're Bay regulars and, you know, we know it all, but here, as you take a look at this, it's really fun. Here are 3 things I'd want to do. Tell me what are 3 things top of your list if someone came to town. That's got nothing to do with the organization per se. It's about location, but sure, that's going to get incredible response because it's just engaging. You're seeing them as a person. So that, you know, it's like a regional specific thing. I also think we need to pay much more attention to milestones. And I don't mean just, hey, you've been a donor for 10 years. Yeah, they have. Thank them for 10 years of investment, but then write them maybe on the anniversary they're giving, like over the last 10 years, these 5 incredible things have happened and you have been a part of making that possible. Right? Mm. So that takes their loyalty, recognizes their 10-year, but shows them some of the payoffs, the dividends of their investing through your organization to make whatever change it is. I'm really focusing on that. It's end of calendar year, beginning of calendar year, so I think of milestones a lot. Those are 2 of my ideas. Matt, have at it.
Yeah, it's kind of, you can have some fun with it, especially as you roll into a new calendar year. And I've done something along the lines of, you know, thank you so much for making 2024 a success. We're so excited now for all that we're going to accomplish in 2025. Speaking of success, you know, and where I was living at the time, the 4 sports team is like, who do you think is going to have the most success this year? And, you know, you just get all kinds of fun responses that way. And so I think another place where we're going, where Diana and I are both going with this, is don't be afraid to have some fun with this. And think about how you build relationships, not just with your donors, but with family and friends, right? You talk about things that are just fun to talk about sometimes, and that's how you find out the people you want to spend your time with, right? And it's really no different with a donor. So obviously you don't want to be doing this all the time, but you know, have some fun throughout the year, and you can find little things like that are short and sweet and will just be easy and fun for a donor to respond to.
You bet. I think, you know, the only thing I would add to that is giving donors a reason to respond rather than just, you know, sending information, you know, but finding that fun, but also having some reason they need to respond to that touch point. So we have a public media client that we work with, and they did a really fun touch point with some of their donors that they've been having a hard time reaching. So it was, I think, National Record Store Day or something like that. So she sent out a touch point asking, do they remember what their first record or CD or tape, whatever their era was, what they bought first. And you know, we all remember that first piece of music, whatever it was. For some of us, 8 tracks. Depending on our age, but it just immediately brought barrage of responses because it took them back to that memory, and it was tied to their mission because they do have a music station, so they were able to bring that into the conversation as well, but use one of these national days. There's so many national days of, X, Y, and Z that you can pull in as well.
Yep.
Good. Okay, Matt, let's go. I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. So here's a question. Our organization doesn't have a major gifts officer yet. Our donor management and solicitations are spread across the CEO, DOD, and several board members. We don't have the green light to hire, so I'm wondering how we can best put some major gifts best practices in use.
Sure. Yeah. So definitely challenging when you don't have those specific fundraisers in place. And this is where you really want to focus on your systems and your processes, because you just may not have that ability to focus on much as the relationship building. But what you want to be absolutely sure of is that even though you don't have those dedicated fundraisers necessarily, make sure that donors still have an assignment and that they're not bouncing around between different staff members, different colleagues within your organization. Once you have pseudo portfolios figured out, you can start to build a touch point plan. And this can be a simple touch point plan. The point is that the donors are continuing to be engaged by your organization. So, if you have a spring and fall newsletter, make sure they're getting that. If you have a large annual event, make sure that they receive an invitation. So that, and really we recommend, especially from the, well, at all levels, that they're receiving a monthly touch point, whether it is major gift or mid-level. So get that touch point plan in place, and then really try to understand how comfortable your staff are with solicitations and with donor conversations. There are ways, and Veritus has plenty of tools too to provide that can teach on something that we call permission-based asking, which really stays donor-centric, which really helps you discover passions and interests about the donor. But you want to make sure that you're not just, in a sense, leaving staff to it who perhaps aren't trained and don't have the experience as fundraisers, especially major gifts. But you want to make sure that you're doing what you can to also equip the ability to engage a donor. And I'd say the fourth part of that is really focusing on key pieces of donor information that will help engage the donor, know when an ask needs to be made, know what kinds of touch points a donor should receive. And you can look at one of the tools we use is called a DEP, donor engagement plan. And within that, you can identify goals, typical giving months. So you've got the data to know when and how to engage a donor.
Good. Perfect. Okay. Either one of you who want to jump in on this one, what is a typical threshold for a major gift donor?
Completely relative to your organization's economic span. So if you've never done a pipeline analysis, many CRMs provide this. It will, you say, run the pipeline analysis, and it will spit out for you a chart. It's usually horizontal bars coming across telling you how many donors at different giving levels. When you look at that, it will probably be pretty easy to figure out what's your general file, where's your mid. Maybe it starts at 500 to 2,500. Maybe it starts at 1,000 to 5,000. Maybe it starts at 5,000, whatever. But it will be apparent if you do a pipeline analysis chart.
Great. Okay, Diana. I was trained to ask by not asking, which basically means not putting a dollar figure out there and letting the donor get to their biggest and best gift through a series of questions the fundraiser would ask. What are your thoughts? Have you seen this done successfully? And if so, in what situations would you apply it?
Okay. Have I seen it done? Yes. Has it raised money? Yes. Has it raised what it could? No way, Jose. If that's the approach, I think your organization, whoever, sorry, don't mean to be so exercise, you're actually robbing a donor from the opportunity to consider something concrete and have a really valuable conversation with them about what they want to do with their philanthropy. That's a question not very many donors get asked, but it could be, Kendra, you've been incredibly generous through the years. Are you open to a conversation about what your philanthropy could look like next year? We have a lot of programs coming up that I think you'd be interested in. And then you have that conversation. You say, this particular project is $250,000. Is that something you'd be open to considering supporting? I really encourage you to go through the next time we have permission-based asking as a certification, I don't know if it's certification, but as a course, take it. Because really, when you say you don't want to ask them for a gift, you're telling the donor, you're devaluing their engagement with you because they're transferring their value through money. Money is not the objective. It's how they transfer. So if I really care about animals and it pains me to see those commercials, I forget the artist with the song and it makes you cry every time. I would want someone to come to me and say, I know this matters to you. Are you open to a conversation of what your investment in the blah, blah, blah program could look like and the difference it could make? We know that $100,000 will make a difference. You're robbing me of that ability to understand the scope of need and how I can help make a difference. That's really what you're taking away that joy to a certain degree. And now that the donor really, if you don't ask, they don't really know what you need. They have no idea really what the need is. So I would get your head and heart right about money. I think sometimes it's more about, just talking about dollars. I think that's really what's going on. It's not really what the donor's afraid of, because guess what? They're a donor. They actually know the relationship to your organization because they already made that vote by giving you a gift. They're not confused about their role. Now, you could say, are you open to talking about a gift amount? If they say no, that is perfectly fine. But that's the donor deciding it. I think this is my other mantra. Don't make decisions for donors. Ask them what they want to talk about and let them decide. I'll get off my soapbox.
So good. Don't make decisions for donors. That's a nugget we can take away today for sure. Okay, Matt, let's talk a little bit about donor advised funds. I know that, DAFs are on everyone's mind. I'm trying to figure out how to best steward a donor or a family that gives through their DAF. Do you steward the same way as an individual, and are there other considerations I need to be aware of?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, first off, I would answer yes, you can steward a donor that's giving through a DAF the same way you would any donor. What Diana was just speaking to is it's still a process of building that relationship, learning what inspires the donor, presenting them with different opportunities so they understand the need, and talking about how they can continue to be involved and grow with your organization. What I appreciate about this question and where we do see a lot of misses and there is great opportunity is also thinking about stewarding the advisor of those funds. We see time and time again where these advisors are managing so many different clients and so much wealth, and when we also work to keep the advisors updated, share reports with them, and it may even be in an anonymous donor situations. It can be, I'd love to share this report. Would you mind passing it on? And would love for you to take a look at it as well and see what you're doing by managing the resources of all of these investors. You're a part of this also. And so then as these advisors build their own client bases, and every once in a while you see these clients come to them and say, hey, I want to be making some gifts, maybe it's year end, maybe for different tax purposes. Then those advisors have your impact reporting in your hands. You have kept them updated, and we've seen gifts come through, pretty substantial gifts come through that way as well.
Yeah, another thing is look for this National Philanthropic Trust 2024 Donor Advised Fund Report. Now it's a 2024 report, but it's actually on 2023 giving. I say this to give you confidence. At the end of 2023, if I have the numbers right, $251 billion sat in donor advised funds, assets under management, not yet directed to charity. That's a boatload of cash. And then secondly, the average DAF holds $140,000. So I say that to you to encourage you to have those conversations Matt was just talking about, because if they're giving you 5,000 from their DAF, it's probably very likely they could easily do 10,000 because the money often carries over year. So just National Philanthropic Trust 2024 DAF report. It just helps you gain confidence about that whole area.
Good. Okay, one more quick question. The $1 million question we get asked so often. Do you have a favorite CRM?
A favorite CRM? Well, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead. My answer is going to be short and sweet. I've got the most experience and I'm most comfortable with Razor's Edge, but I am not promoting any one CRM, but that's just what I'm most familiar with.
I think it's relative to the size of your organization, how much IT staff you have, and how much and who, if you have a team member on your donor team who can do the other part of it to make decisions about that. Salesforce is amazing. It can do anything. It's one of the best things about it. What's one of the worst things about it? It can do anything. And you get paralysis. Razor's Edge is a little more out of the box. So there's more, it was built for fundraising. So there's a greater depth of years of knowing of what reports to run. And it's, yes, you can customize and all that sort of stuff. And people use Tableau and whatnot. But I would, from a relationship standpoint, simple is better. Now, that's different than direct response and all those things. But what I find frustrating is whenever someone does a CRM, the very last group to talk to the implementation team is usually the relationship fundraisers. Often time is running out and budget is running out on conversion. So if you're looking at a system, try to get to the front of the line for those conversations so your needs are met. And here's one way to talk about it. I know that my team represents 3,000 of our 300,000 donors. The value of our donors is 300 million. That gets attention and you might move up in the food chain. So just remember the value of the portfolios you're managing and keep those part of your conversation. It's just not the number of donors, it's the value.
Yeah. Thanks, Diana. I know that's always a hard question to answer, but there's so many options out there.
Yeah.
So thank you both of you so much for all of your incredible insight. It was just incredible to hear your thoughts today on all these great questions. So Rebecca, I'll turn it back to you.
Yes, I echo that. Thank you both so much for all of your insight today. And Kendra, thank you for doing such a beautiful job of facilitating today's discussion. I just wanted to remind you all that we will send a recording of this via email tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. We would love for you to reference back to this and share it with your team. And if you have any other questions that come up, this isn't just a one and done situation. We love engaging with you and answering your questions. I put the link for our free community hub space in the chat. You can go ahead and join that space. There are a number of different discussion boards in there where you can get your questions answered. And you can, of course, always email us and we'd be happy to chat with you. So if you need anything, reach out. We hope you all have a really successful year end. Make sure you take care of yourself and take care of your donors. And we hope to see you on another webinar soon. Thank you so much and take care.